Welcome to another edition of Tales from the Attitude Era. I am Rob Pasbani, joined by the man who was the head writer of WWE, then WWF, during this time where every week we will look through a different episode, different moment, different impactful memory from the most successful time in WWE history. I'm, of course, talking about Tommy Blacha. Welcome, Tommy.
Yay. Woo. All right. What's happening? Where's the crowd? Capacity crowd here in both our abodes.
They're hanging from the rafters, indeed,
right.
Which is I've been trying to take care of for a while. It's very annoying. And we have a great show. So the ball keeps rolling here. And again, I'm so fascinated as things are settling in, new angles are beginning. It is the Smackdown after the No Mercy pay-per-view. We're reviewing October 21st, 1999 is the Smackdown episode we're reviewing. Now, we reviewed the Raw before this in our previous episode, and I'm noticing that Raw and SmackDown are like a yin and yang. Like it's you don't advance the story too much, but there's just a few extra flavors and nuggets on SmackDown that happen to keep things moving along. Would you agree with that?
Sure. And it's such a whirlwind. I keep going back to the same things all the time, which are like, you're flying by the seat of your pants. And when you have a Raw, you're in one city, remember, and Raw is amazing because it's live. So when it's over, you're like, it's over. There's no editing. It's done. Then you go to SmackDown in a different city. A little bit of human nature is the fact that SmackDown can be edited, a little bit. So it's not quite the peak sort of like, okay, everything has to be like right on. Sometimes there can be like a little bit of a lull, if you will, especially when you have a pay-per-view, a Raw, and a SmackDown. You got to realize those are three different cities in a row, three huge productions in a row. And SmackDown is Tuesday live and then to tape. So it was aired on Thursday, I believe, sometimes Wednesday, whatever. And then also before that, you'd have, which we should do some side shows about, Sunday Night Heat, which I always liked, which was on MTV, which actually did quite well. So you'd have dark matches, then you'd have dark matches, which are matches that are not on TV, either developmental talent or someone to look at or something, depending on how big the card was. Then you'd have Sunday Night Heat, which you'd put a different ring apron on for Sunday, and then you'd do SmackDown. And sometimes if the storylines would intertwine, you'd be like, okay, wait, so the first match, that's going from Sunday, the Sunday after Thursday. So, you know what I mean? Sometimes it would like screw with your mind a little, but, generally not. So having said that, you're on the fly because things would happen on Monday Night Raw that you'd always looking for, here's the long-term angle, here's this. But what happened on Monday Night Raw, sometimes you have to service. And sometimes you just switch it up because you're like, okay, we got to, talk about this or, address this, what have you. So it's always so fun to go back and look at these because I'm always in that weird spot where you say, no, the thinking was, and so thematically where you're going. And I just look at them and like, huh? Thematically was like, just pull it off, just don't make it the drizzling shit. Oh fuck, what happened, huh? And sometimes by the end of Tuesday night, if you had a pay-per-view 3 days in a row, you're sitting there like, all right, we're in Cleveland, I gotta fly back to New York. Where's the rental car? Where are we going back now? Or you can
I didn't even
speak.
consider that. This is the third day of a very busy run, and I'm not sure at this point. The wrestlers were probably doing house shows on Saturday as well.
Oh yeah.
And so this is the end of the run, the last day. This is everybody's Friday, essentially. They're about to get a few days off. And so I could see that.
And to speak of that, some of them don't, it all like, cause then it peels off to different house shows and depending on where people live and what they're doing. And then also everything's going so huge. Guys are peeling off to do whatever kinds of shows.
Like media and stuff. Right.
Media or whatever pops up, because
actually,
especially
in this episode, Lawler mentions how Mick Foley had a full day of press that day where he did Conan and he was on some news show, and I was like, wait a minute, how did he get to Louisville? I'm like, okay, hold on, this is taped. But still, you're right, like Foley didn't go home. Foley had press to do after
it's remarkable. And sometimes they'll have scheduling conflicts that were based on like, hey, office, I can't be in Lexington and then in LA 4 hours later. like just because especially then was like it was growing and there was no. It's a little different now. We're like, okay, the difference was there still was mainstream media and wrestling was still this side thing, kind of like wanting respect and breaking into it. So there was no saying no to anything ever, and so things were building. So these guys were just like, man, some of the schedules, like, because then the next week it'd be like, how was your break? And you'd get that look like, break, like, oops, no, I did a fucking house show in Cedar Rapids and then did this and then, went home for 6 hours and, and what have you.
So let's kick off the show. It kicks off with Mick Foley coming out without the mask, still in serious mode, which I love this storyline so much. I loved it at the time, just rewatching it now. It's so great. It's so great that Foley has these different versions of his character where he's like the little like the little child, right? Or like the psycho, and this is just serious. Man, he's like being a man right now,
Yeah, he's a man, and he's a little like Quasimodo, who people don't know that the Hunchback of Notre Dame misunderstood, ultimately sensitive, but a monster, so there's that. But now he's just leaking into like just being himself, and as Jim Ross would say, Mrs. Foley's little boy. So it's like building on this whole thing, like just this kid from Long Island who wanted to be a wrestler. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. He has like 6 things going on at any given moment.
And you guys are doing a great job promoting this book. This book is a very big deal. Mick Foley's first autobiography, Have a Nice Day. It was the first book on a major publishing deal for WWE at the time. And this book means a lot to me, actually. I was thinking about it because I was a teenager at the time and I hated reading. I just never I don't know how I passed English class, honestly, because I would never read the books. I would just be hyper focused in class on whatever the discussion is. And that was enough to get me through the tests. But I just hated reading. I think part of it is also I have a mild attention deficit disorder, so, but this was the first book that I read where I was just like glued into it. And I remember I would read it to and from my job at the supermarket, stocking groceries. And I would be upset when I would get to work because it's like, no, I have to finish this chapter. I have to learn how he did this thing in Japan or how Ric Flair fucked him over in WCW.
How funny.
And
you're the last bastion of old school people in the sense of like, pre gimmicks of social media, or whatever. You're a grocery clerk who has to get out to his car in the break to read a book. That's amazing.
I would literally spend my lunch break continuing to read. I was I needed to finish this. I needed to.
Do you know that links you with 200 years ago? There was like, has to be stories of whoever influential people that were in 1840 were a grocery clerk and like on their break had to like read a book, so that's all changed.
It taught
good for you.
It taught me that I just don't really like reading fiction books that much because it's too much imagination for me. I want nonfiction. And then I realized like, I'm just gonna.
You want nonfiction, but pro wrestling. I know it's all, but that's odd. But it is nonfiction. But absolutely.
Or I love reading books from wrestlers or music books. Music industry books, stuff like that.
Well, as you know, like with funny industry and the industries you've been involved with, metal, wrestling, and the technology is such now that like books are like self-published, and then this actually caused an explosion of like every wrestler has 5 books now. But I don't know. You tell me the percentage that are actually written by the wrestler,
like 10%, probably. Yeah, very little.
Yeah, that's being kind. And if they are, it's maybe I sit down with you and tell you some stuff. But Foley wrote this book. He wrote another fictional novel too, Teet and Brown. Foley's the real deal. He wrote this book, and in fact, he told me once why he wrote it was. There was a ghostwriter at one point, and there was the time he lost his ear, which is, and people know or don't know, in a match with Vader, I think, in Germany. And you do the gimmick where your head gets twisted in the ropes, and there's some kind of cable, and he was really struggling to get out, and then to the point where like he pulled his head out and he ripped his own ear off, and so he said during that moment in the ghostwriter's version, he was like, he's just not getting to the point. He's not selling how terrified I was in that moment to have like, is my carotid artery being shut off? I'm, when you're so like, oh, I got to get out of this, to the point where you rip your ear off. That's, he was like, the impact wasn't there. So he's like, I got to write it myself, which is like,
it worked out
kind of amazing. Yeah. Which kind of like, I love that. Like, you're not getting it. And which all speaks to what I love about Mick Foley is just this grab bag of ridiculousness, like you pointed out, of like, he's goofy, he's this or that, but but like the integrity is huge, I'm writing my own book. Now I'm writing, you know what I mean? So he's just, do not judge a book by its cover, in spades is Mick Foley, one of the all-time greats.
And so he said, so he comes out, he's talking about the book, and he's saying how many people say that the Hell in the Cell is the greatest thing he's ever done. But no, that's not true. This book is, in fact, the greatest thing he's ever done, because he wrote it all himself. No ghostwriter, just Mrs. Foley's baby boy and 16 yellow pads or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so then he requests Vince McMahon to come out. Vince McMahon, with a fresh dye job of his hair here, looked phenomenal. And, and he tells... Mick Foley says, The Rock is a number one contender and Steve Austin's number one contender, but I should be a number one contender. Like, and that, he's willing to fight for it. And he uses McMahon's own line, and one of my favorite phrases from this era. He says, The Rock is afraid and he's lacking testicular fortitude.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Love that phrase. And this immediately prompts The Rock to come out. Huge pop, super over, and he says these aren't just any testicles,
right?
These are the people's testicles.
Yeah, that was great. I want to always give a shout out to Kerwin, the director, and whoever the technical switcher was, because it's something you always take for granted, is the timing of the music pops. And this era was always like, it's like, it's like dialogue between someone and just the timing is always now.
It's perfect. I agree with you.
It's perfect all the time. And especially in these few shows, just like now.
Yeah. And it's never like a second off or two.
Right.
It's just right at the moment it needs to be.
Yep.
So The Rock accepts Mick Foley's challenge. And Foley says, a nice little teaser, that he meant everything he said about The Rock in his book. Now, I recall that he actually didn't have flattering things to say in the first book about The Rock. They have since made amends. I believe he was, he thought that the people's elbow was a stupid move, which, I mean, that's not really that big of a dig. But the most interesting part was that he was upset that The Rock never came to check on him after the infamous Royal Rumble match where The Rock delivered 13 or 15 chair shots to Mick Foley's head. And they'd since made amends on that. But I like that they're using, that you're integrating this into the storyline now. Like this is the part of the story, which is so great, because here, this book, Mick Foley's book, exists in kayfabe and out of kayfabe. Like, the book is not in kayfabe, but you're taking something that happened out of kayfabe and bringing it into the kayfabe. My favorite thing.
That's like what we talked before about, like the motivated camera or what have you, and and always was a staple of McMahon to like put in truth as much as you can. And the lines being blurred, and sometimes it got confusing. And even in later eras, you're like, wait, sometimes I didn't like when, like, even one of the WrestleManias, I think after one of the matches, they came out and were like, oh, I'm fine. We all know that was just a match, where I thought, like, well, at least keep the kayfabe through the whole WrestleMania, like you're hurt, or, you know what I mean? There's certain, that sometimes bothers me. But in this case, there's a lot of things. And again, that's the pace of the business. Like, this is great. The book is great. Where people, if you were to bring that up during the moment, you're like, hey, did you ever realize that this is kind of simultaneously breaking kayfabe, but not? You'd be like, what? Fuck it. Don't, no time, and like what's working is working, so it is an interesting wrinkle. It's always like, sometimes you got to like, yeah, that is something. But yet for the show, whatever, a lot of people who, and also it's kind of good, if you want to read the book and be wizened up by the book, go ahead. I'm sure a lot of fans, it's amazing. I wonder, not unlike yourself, I wonder the percentage of people who don't read books and weren't into reading read that book. It's probably huge. You know what I mean? Probably did more for literacy, people, than
I agree. Yeah. And
Interesting.
it's a good read. I recommend it still if you haven't read it.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And a couple really interesting things. I know there was a lot of heat on Foley. When I say a lot of heat, for getting all those chair shots, because it's kind of like, because what happens is people are like, well, you're raising this bar now. It's like, now does everyone have to get all those chair shots to be that impactful? And like, you're one of the all-time greats. You, Terry Funk, whoever, some kind of, nutsos out there who take these incredible bumps, and everyone's like, well, I don't want to have to take those kind of bumps, to become that legendary. So it's like, when do we back off that? So, that's, kind of an it's so to speak. So
yeah, the catch-22 of Mick Foley is he's presented as an everyman, as one of the audience members, and it's almost like this could be you could do this, but literally nobody could do what Mick Foley did in terms of how much abuse and punishment he took in his career, and just doing those elbow drops to the concrete floor in WCW every night for nothing, for no reason, just for the love of the game,
Yeah, and just the body, back body drops on cement, and
yes,
on everywhere. And on, let alone the Japanese death matches where I think he told me once he was like, his arm was all like gouged from some, barbed wire match or something, was all like scabby and pussy. And I don't want to make this up. Either he was kicked off a plane or something. It was like, oh, you've got to cover that arm. It's just like, huh? Just coming back from Japan. Oh, just getting some air on this. Like, what? Oh, I didn't even notice. Oh yeah, my arm's lacerated, and gig marks on the arm, let alone let alone the no ear, teeth, etc.
Yeah, I remember there was a shirt. And the back of it was like a full size photo of him head to toe, and it was like pointing out every
injury points. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
so good,
incredible. And just to say too, as far as the people's elbow, that's one of those things that it just, who do you blame? You blame the people, because when a move gets over that huge, it just has to be done. So it is preposterous where someone has to like wait there. The conceit overall is like, can you pin the guy? Well, no, but he'll have to wait there for upwards of 30 seconds, and before the elbow comes in. But it's like, it's when you're out there and you're just like, well, it's just over so big. In fact, probably the worst or best one of all time from this era is the Worm, if you remember Scotty Too Hottie.
Yes.
And there was points where like people were just laughing, like, I'm selling with my shoulders to the canvas for about 1 minute and 10 seconds while he goes like, first the look, then the other look, and then the back and forth, and then the Worm, and then which gives you no momentum. It's just like,
it makes no sense. Yeah,
it makes no sense. It's preposterous. The sense it makes is just when you can do anything where you just give a look, and oh my God, 17,000 people are going bonkers for the entire time. You're just like, well, just sell it. It's it's
you're right. I wonder if the Worm predates the people's elbow, and in the sense that it allowed The Rock to get away with it. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
What came first.
Again, what allows anyone to get away with it is just the massive pop.
Yeah. Well,
this
was the moment where audiences just wanted familiar moments, like more so than a great match. They wanted an entertaining variety show, kind of.
And sometimes it's hard to think like that, because you're just, while you're not wrong at all, you're just going for what goes. Like the pop still rules. You know what I mean? So if that's that's and you have to mix it up. You can't really go. So therefore, because it's so hard to contrive things, you can't say like, so now we need big, crazy finishing moves that are 2 minutes. Well, that's going to shit the bed immediately. You know what I mean? Yeah. And none of these things are actually, it's funny. It would be funny to trace exactly how it happened, because they're not often just like, and now I'll come out with the people and I'll pause and it'll be huge. They just kind of evolve a lot of times, as do catchphrases, even by the nature of the term catchphrase. is something that catches on, and the great ones are never like, you know, the greatest one of all time, Austin 3:16, just came off the cuff. And then later when you're given the marching orders to like make a catchphrase, and sometimes it's like, you know, boy, I don't know, like Roman Reigns come out with "Believe It." It's like, okay, it's not bad, but it's really being shoved down people's throats. And, you know, and sometimes it does him a disservice to be like, and then you hit your catchphrase that's, you know, and so you got to, as the phrase is, catch as catch can. I try to like, you do that with everything, you know, and see like, I don't know how many, you know, what's getting over is getting over. So roll with the punches, as they say.
So I thought this promo was over, but in fact, The Rock then, as Mick Foley leaves, asks Vince McMahon, you know, I'm a number one contender. I have a match. And by the way, if Mick Foley wins, he gets The Rock's spot here in this match. So The Rock asks, why doesn't the other number one contender, Stone Cold Steve Austin, have a match? And Vince says, well, nobody's challenged Austin. And right to your point moments ago, Val Venus' music right on cue. And this was the moment where Val is really, you're trying to make Val from just a mid-card comedy act into a viable upper mid-carder potential main eventer. Like this is his moment here. It doesn't quite stick. But you're doing everything you can to get him into that position that he needs to be in. And he challenges Austin. Of course, Austin's music hits right away, biggest pop. And at this point, again, I'm just like floored by, you have the top talent, right? Like you have Austin, Rock, Foley, Triple H. Like there's so many people in your wheel, and this is just the top of your card. Like the middle and everything is so loaded here. So Austin faces Val later on in the night, and this is the whole first segment. Great opening segment, does not linger. It establishes the whole show. You establish the main event. You establish the top of the hour match. It sets up the whole show here. This is a good business, as you say.
Yeah, and it's tough because you're always looking from, you know, like a booking angle to be like, well, how do you protect Val? You know what I mean? You kind of, these guys are over, they're going to get over. How do you build him and protect him? Because he's obviously not going to get a sneaky win here, or maybe, you know, the idea is like, oh, could he? You know what I mean? Or that's not in the cards as all this is being produced. And one reason for his spot is like, he's a hell of a worker, he's in shape, all that stuff. So, you know, it's like, and then that's given to the agent. So it's something to deal with. Like, boy, I don't know. You know, sometimes it's like, it's almost, he's in a great spot because he's getting that rub. But in a way, it's like you just pointed out, like, my goodness, these monsters are so over. How do you break into that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
maybe
it's hard.
In some ways, yeah, it's hard to, and getting over is mysterious, you know. It's like writing a hit song. You're like, you never know. Could something have happened? And that's when people said, like, oh my God, do I got to take 30 chair shots to be over? How do I do this if I can't get a 1, 2, 3? So it's difficult.
So then backstage after the commercial, Triple H is like kind of bragging to Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon says that, oh, you're also wrestling tonight. You're facing Al Snow. And Triple H is all angry. And I love Vince goes, what, you don't think you could beat him? Which, what a dig at Al Snow. But Triple H gets so bad. And Triple H is like, I'm really being won over by the Triple H character as we're doing this rewatch, because I remember at the time just not buying into him in this moment. Also, partially because the way he won the title wasn't the cleanest way. I was thinking about it. It was at SummerSlam. It was like a 3-way. Austin didn't want to do the pinfall to him, so they gave Foley the title or something, and then Foley took the pin. So he already got off on not the best foot on how he established his first reign. So he had to work from behind a little. True,
not true, in the sense that, like, these guys are so over and they're so big. It made sense to make him a little sniveling and be a backdoor. You know what I mean? You know. So
yeah. I was going to say that absolutely in the Al Snow match too. Just how he had to cheat to win, and this is a mid-carder, you know. But it's so good for the main event Triple H character that, like, he's Ric Flair essentially. He's doing the Ric Flair gimmick.
And that was what was so difficult about the Val Austin match, because at that time you're like, well, what do you mean? Austin's just a steamroller. Everyone knows it. And it's like, back in the day when people used to, it was a little different. People used to, face Hogan. It was the same thing. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, well, and then, you're going to go see Don Morocco face Hogan. Yeah, it's going to be sell. Oh my God, he's unstoppable. It's like same 5 things, but it was just, the audience is just like, what? Of course, that's what you have to do. You know what I mean? It's not even about booking or decision making. It's like the people have spoken. The people of Rome has spoken. You're done. I mean, that's just the nature of it. Where, like you pointed out, there could be a little more wrinkles to like, oh, Al Snow could have beat Triple H. He had to, it's like, he's sniveling.
Yeah. Okay, so we take a pause on the main event scene. We go into the mid card. Test comes out, continuing his feud with British Bulldog. He was attacked by Bulldog and the posse on Raw. And Test says he had a feeling something like this would happen. So he has some backup. And the backup is Edge and Christian, fresh off of their ladder match. Now, again, they just wrestled a really intense match not 2 days ago. And here they are after how many hours, how many hundreds of miles of travel, wrestling again. This was a short match. Also, one of the Mean Street Posse, Joey Abs, actually trained with Edge and Christian. They go way back to their Canada days, which I thought was a nice little Easter egg. And really, what stood out here, this was not a 5-star classic by any means, but Test's athleticism really stood out to me. He did an incredible flying elbow drop, and this is a tall man. This is not the high spot.
What was sure? No, he's preposterous. Legitimately, I think he's 6'7". I think and fellow Canadian. I don't know how much past they shared, but this was a case which is so fun about pro wrestling at the time. Sometimes too, it's like there is sometimes. Oh, here's a little mix and match. Okay, let's see what you got. As you kind of put it out there, see what you got, and that's really. Edge and Christian, their whole careers are based on that, frankly. Let's see what you got. Ladder, you know what I mean? No one really, they made their own pushes, I like to put, frankly. And you could tell here, like, there was no plans for them in the sense of like, okay, throw them, they're seconding Test, as opposed to these guys just had the best match of the night 2 nights ago, And you're always looking for like, where can a faction come out of what, you know what I mean? All this is always at play. And then I think one of the things we talked about, just aesthetically, Test, Edge and Christian, just like, blonde hair, Viking looking, it's like, oh yeah, it works, so.
And this was easy peasy, continuing the storyline with Bulldog and Test. Then we see before the commercial break, we see Big Show entering the arena, teasing that he's coming next. And Big Show is here. He does a promo backstage. I forgot what incredible shape Paul White was in during this era. He looks just incredible. He looks like
he's
sexual
scary.
casting. Yes,
he's scary. If anything. Sometimes I remember them saying like, you got to really bring it, because he was tentative because he's so big and strong, and be like, oh, I'm going to hurt, I don't know my own, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's kind of like a 16-year-old playing with like 12-year-olds. Come on, bring it. Well, I'm going to hurt him. So it's like, it was amazing. And to, now, here's the funny thing I wanted to bring up about, which maybe is fun about doing this podcast. The pace of wrestling. The young man who played the cop, right? The fake cop who delivered the news and is now here, with the boss man. I don't know who this guy is. He's kind of like, in the storyline, you're like, okay, we need a guy who's going to be the fake cop. And then, of course, Big Show's going to, hand him his ass as Big Boss Man powders. Powders means get out of there, right? So local worker, I'm not sure this guy was a local worker or an athlete or whatever, but it's kind of funny where, okay, this guy shows up and here he is. Hey, how are you? And he's told what he's going to do and what have you. But people were kind of, as everyone was really saying to the Big Show, like, okay, so this is huge. Big Boss Man is really, he's fucking with you. Your dad's death, whatever. This isn't just heat and rest. You need to go to another level. So it's one thing. It's like you said, like, it's Paul White. He's so big and strong. And people are like, you really got to take it to another level. Like, so this poor fucking guy has got to be like walking around backstage, and people are just kind of ribbing him like, oh, well, like, it was nice knowing you, sir. Oh, better get that guy a seat. And then, like, I remember this guy being either in catering, something like, oh, last meal. There's a lot of like jokes like this going around. So this poor guy's like, ha, 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 but, oh, and as wrestlers often do, you don't want to really go over it too much. You know what I mean? You want to keep it fresh. So I'm not even sure Paul White even like interacted with this guy before. Sometimes it's like that where like, hey, how are you going to be doing this? Maybe there was a little bit of it like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit you with this. And okay, we'll be fine. But for the most part, it was like, we're going to save it till we're out there. And so this guy's got to be like, he had to be like, gulp. Like, and I won't interrupt you, but as you see the match, not the match, but my God, he gets manhandled. It's just brutal. And this is a big man. This guy was, I think this guy was every bit of like 6'3", 250.
Yeah.
And just a rag doll. I mean, it was just brutal.
Well, that segment that you're discussing is a few moments later. This is.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. But okay.
No, it's wonderful. It's
I got so excited. But go on. Yeah,
this is just hit. This was just Big Show backstage with Lillian Garcia, who I don't even remember. She was a backstage interviewer. I always remember her as just the announcer, and he is in full serious mode. He is angry. He said he was going to dismember the Boss Man tonight, and I got scared. I peed in my pants a little. Then we have backstage Al Snow talking about getting his first title shot in 17 years. And like we talked about moments ago, Triple H attacks him from behind. He can't leave anything to chance. He has to weaken Al Snow even before the match, even though Al Snow presented as literally as a jobber. He's the head of the job squad, which is so funny that WWE was acknowledging this at the time. And
it was almost like an open secret that like everyone, because we were always like pushing Al Snow, Gewurz. We loved Al Snow, and it was almost like an open secret. Like, yeah, Vince just doesn't like Al Snow, and then and even Al kind of knew it. And then Foley would make jokes, but even within that, he was always around and always like kind of like counted on for things. So he was, a well-respected worker. That's even seems rude because to me, he was like so much more, but that's the open secret, and
yeah. And really, I feel like Foley got him over as his punching bag with all the jokes in his book. So we talked about the match already. Triple H beat Al Snow. He gave Al Snow a lot in the beginning, where I never, obviously, as a smart wrestling fan, I never thought Al Snow would win, but you could see how in the course of the match, like, wow, Al's really getting the upper hand here. But one mistake, pedigree, boom, it's over. Then we have The Rock coming out, and man, he's so over. Like I'm just constantly impressed with how much the crowd loves him. He talks about Poontang Pie. I never like Poontang Pie was a step too far for me. I thought in the sense of like The Rock had better material. Not that I was offended or anything, but it was just like that's.
Well, yeah, it's hard to judge. He's so over that, like, well,
right. The crowd's going to cheer no matter what. Yeah,
it worked, and it's like, and then and I hear what you're saying, but then there's other moments where he's like, "Do you like pie?" And then you see people in the cheap seats,
go
throwing
crazy.
Their hats,
Yeah.
So you're like, well, what? It was amazing because he could come out almost like I remember joking with him, like it's like just. Like a dictator back in the day or something that could just come out, and then because of just the look and then the smell, based on that line, and just I was like, people and everyone was like, holy shit, you just hear it through the tunnels, like, my God, what did he do? Oh, he looked up there and he went, and it went to another level, and I'm just like, man, that's Hogan over.
and it's crazy though, because as over as he was, to me, Austin was even like just a notch more. Like the crowd was just a little louder for Austin.
It's so fascinating because you there's like, it was like different kinds of pops in a way. You know what I mean? Like Rock's kind of built because he can't, just because that slow, like he came out and the look and the smell, and it was like just that kind of like sort of building. If you were to really like break it down and, you know, like examine the decibels or whatever, wanted to, you know, do some ridiculous pseudo intellectual deep dive on the pops. And then Austin's was glass break, boom, you know, but they're both like so equally over, you know, how could you nitpick who was it? It kind of, you know, probably ebbed and flowed each week or whatever, but they're just
based on the city or whatever.
Sure. And they're both like just out of control over. So
yeah. So Val Venus comes out and does commentary for the match, and he has Foley's book. So it's The Rock versus Foley, and the match is almost a backdrop for the story you're telling, with Val Venus reading the lines from the book that we talked about earlier on. And I thought, again, an incredible integration of this book that you want people to buy. It's such a natural way to promote the book, where you're not just like, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book. You know, like very, very good product placement here.
And then also going to Mick, where he's so funny, and so that it's almost like it's gratuitous promotion, but the character is almost like you're allowed to be like, oh, it's this fucking guy with his fucking book again. Shut up, you know. But yet that's funny because it's still, you know, legitimately promotes it, and so it's like, you know, it all works. Yeah, great.
And so the book literally is used in the finish with Venus attacking the Rock with the book, I believe, and no finish here. And of course, and it's for the best, because you don't want the Rock or Mick Foley taking a pinfall here. You want the Rock in the match according to how the storyline is going, but you don't want Foley to look weak. So great way to get out of the finish and putting the heat on Val Venus, who still has a match coming up.
Yep.
And then we have the match that I was looking forward to. I'm actually surprised this wasn't hyped up more during the show. The women's title showdown between the fabulous Moola and Mae Young. And this is very early in Mae's WWE career, because she has yet to inherit the fabulous Moola theme song. Moola has the wonderful piano intro, which is like the old lady version of the glass break, I think, of the instant recognizable theme song. And oh my God, this match had it all. This match, wow.
Well, you do say you're surprised about it being promo, you know, but at the time it still was like, you know, when this match was over, it was like, holy shit, that was something. You couldn't have counted on that. You know what I mean? There was a possibility of like, they're ready to go home at any moment. But, you know, it's a wild card.
Fair.
My God, they're in their 70s. So retrospect is easy to be like, why wasn't that promo? But it wasn't until after you see Mae Young with that World War II era forearm tattoo.
Oh my God. The striking. This was a fucking New Japan match with the striking. Like you know what really impressed me was they wanted to have a good match. They weren't there to just phone it in and collect a paycheck. They wanted to prove that they're tough ladies that could fight. And they did so much.
You know, even beyond that, I don't even think that that's accurate in the sense that's just who they are. It wasn't even like, so you're out there to prove a point? What? No. This is what, like Mark Henry said, this is what we do. This is who, you know, so it was just like, in fact, it would be insulting to go like, are you okay? 78-year-old woman doing all that. Are you okay? Just like get that look. Get out of me. Get out of my face. Like, what do you mean, am I okay? Am I okay? Yeah.
At one point, Moola threw Mae Young onto the announcer table. I was just like, oh my God. Like these bumps that these women were taking. And the match ends with, it's a little clunky with the ending where Mae Young is on the top of the second rope in the turnbuckle, giving Moola fists. And then her hand gets stuck in the ref's shirt. And then the ref is doing spots with Mae Young caught up in his shirt. And it finally ends when Ivory comes out and she just can't take it anymore. She, as a professional, she's like, this is an insult to my sport. I should still be the women's champion. She, of course, just lost the title at No Mercy this past Sunday. And she attacks him. And then it's a whole schmaz with the entire women's roster coming in. But I'll tell you what, like,
why not?
The crowd was shockingly dead for this match. They were not really, maybe they were just so stunned at what they were looking. But when Tori came in and speared Ivory, huge pop, huge, the biggest reaction of the match.
Yeah. Well, you can, like I said, Monday morning quarterback a little. Maybe it should have been a little tighter, and there was some of that little botchiness, if you will. But, and also just, when you have these shows of this time frame, there is a natural point where like people got to go pee and get popcorn.
Right.
And even within that, sometimes I've noticed when you're live, when you got just the noise of the ring and the big performers in the live aspect, and then you bring like lighter people in, like literally weight size, and it has a little less ring. There's little things like that add up to it being a little lull potentially, but it's just a certain inevitability at times when you have these massive cards, and then it certainly did not. It wasn't the Drizzly shits, not even close. And then, like you said, it all worked. And then sometimes you lean on that, like, that's a little better for TV. There's a phrase, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think, kind of. And that's kind of true. And then, it's like, yeah, that was great for TV. So at a certain point, you're like, what? You want people are going to be like, they would be losing their breath, and they'd have sore throats, and they'd be exhausted to keep them up.
I'm being very unfair also to your point. The previous match was Rock and Mick Foley. So the audience's tank is depleted in terms of energy. And you're right. This would be a perfect like concession stand break or what have you. So this was probably that. And
they followed that, and they made it work. Like they say, you don't want to follow that,
Yeah. No, I love this. I'm so impressed with both of these women and the effort that they put in, and all the women here. This was great. I love the schmaz at the end, and I'm very, very curious. I'm guessing this is moving to like a 6-pack challenger or something, where like some way to get the title off Moola without having to job her out. She doesn't want to take the pinfall.
Well, I mean, my goodness, what is she? If you add up her title reign, was it 30 years?
Something right, exactly. Move over, Bruno.
I know a lot of it was based in like there's a women's title, but no one's. She had it. She probably had it. She held it dormant for a good 3 years or 5 years here or there.
I think it was inactive for even like a decade, or like a long time. Yeah. And then I love this next segment. It's Mark. There's even a graphic. Mark Henry's 5th therapy session. And here we have Sexual Chocolate recapping how difficult it's been to find a good therapist. How, his first therapist didn't work out. His second one was a man who tried to flirt with him. This other woman tried to flirt with him, blah, 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 blah. And he just doesn't know what to do. And what go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say why this works. This could fucking be the drizzling shits, but it's just Mark Henry, because you're on the fly, and you're always like, we gotta have a therapist, and you're meeting some local actor who you might be in Lexington, Kentucky, and, hello, who are you? You're this, and like you gotta make it work. And his natural, first of all, he whips out that $1 million smile whenever, and it's it's like, oh, he's half over based on that, in my opinion. But just, man, he's got that just natural way of like, man, what did he say about the one guy? And then that guy came on, he almost got his wig split, and just like, so there's lines you sometimes like, hey, how about, here's something funny or whatever, or he'll say, but for the most part, it's just natural flow of Mark Henry. He's just a natural. He's great.
And so as he finishes his monologue, the camera pans out to reveal who is the therapist, but the Godfather.
Yeah.
And this gets a great pop from the crowd.
Yeah.
Great reveal. A great, like, this took 5 episodes to set up this joke. And, and the Godfather, of course, he smacks some sense into Mark Henry, metaphorically speaking, saying, "Nothing's wrong with you, man."
Yeah.
No,
I remember that. We were talking about that. It'd be like, the only thing's wrong with you is you think something's wrong with you. That was like the only line we kind of like threw out there. And those two just like, it's so
he
funny.
even quoted a Big Pun song from the moment. He's just like, "You're a player and you just like to crush a lot." He said it so naturally. It was so great. And Mark, you see the smile on Mark's face, like nothing's wrong with me. It was such a feel good segment.
Yeah. And it was a natural conversion of,
Yes. And this sets up a segment later on in the show. Then we have what I believe is the match. This is Rob's work rate match of the night. This is my new bit.
Yeah. Work rate match of the night. I like it.
This was a great match. It's the Hollies versus the Hardys. And again, the Hardys 2 days off, 2 days removed from a very intense physical ladder match. And they had a great match. I believe this was for the tag team titles. The Hollies just won the tag team titles from the Rock and Sock Connection the previous show. And it's so interesting to me, too, because this is the very beginning of the Hardys' run. A lot of their signature moves don't even have names yet. It's just Michael Cole being like, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah.
Look at that.
Or to borrow the always the old Vince McMahon from ever doesn't know the move. What a maneuver.
Right. And so I thought the ending was so brilliant here. The ending is the Hardys have the upper hand, and they have Crash Holly in one corner, and Jeff does the whisper in the wind, and that's where Matt Hardy gets on all fours, and Jeff jumps off of his back and does kind of like a splash or whatever onto the other person. He does it on Crash Holly, turns around to do it on Hardcore Holly. Hardcore delivers one of his beautiful standing drop kicks. It looked like he jumped higher than the top rope.
It was unbelievable.
And it's great finish.
And Jeff Hardy just splays out crazily.
Yeah.
Bob Holly the timing was remarkable. It's just like, wow. I mean, to just put it into perspective, because I remember seeing it like live out there, just like, you got this whole show, you got all this stuff, and then at some point, just based in just a spot to go like, wow. You know what I mean? Like, spot of the night. I mean, spot of the month. We're like, to look at that one over and over, and just like the precision of Bob Holly, the confidence and the toughness of him, and here he comes, and because those things can be dicey. Like then I'll kick you out of midair. Like even when they work, it's like, okay, it didn't not work. It wasn't shitty. It's like, okay, that's good. But that one just was like, holy smokes. That was
you couldn't have done it better.
Yeah, couldn't have done it better. And what a spot. What a high risk spot. It was spectacular.
And look, someone's got to lose. The Hardys aren't there yet. You haven't established them as a top team, and they lost, but they didn't look weak. They didn't get quote unquote jobbed out. This is my favorite kind of a clean finish.
Sure. And this even speaks to like sometimes, it gets lost in the attitude area here and there, that like good old fashioned, like you don't look weak when you lose on a spot like that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You're flying across and you get drop kicked out of the air. You know what I mean? And the selling that you deliver on that, it's just like, it's not like 1, 2, 3. Oh, what do we do now? It's like, holy smokes, what a performance. What a performer. Yeah. It keeps you elevated, which is really speaks to the, like, Edge and Christian and the Hardys, how they're getting over. It's almost not about like, when you really, who won and lost those matches or were they clean, it's spectacular. So there you go.
Yeah. It's fascinating to watch both teams slowly coming up the ranks. And of course, both teams have a huge 2000, so it's very cool to watch week to week. Now we have the segment that you were talking about earlier, which is the Big Show versus Big Bossman segment. Big Bossman comes out of the crowd with this cop, and behind the cop is the real security, which is the WWF security guy at the time who wore the backwards Kango hat. Did you remember his name?
Jim Dotson.
Oh my God, that dude. I was so waiting for that guy to get involved in like a storyline one day, you know, like.
Well, he did. And then some of it was like squished because they kind of thought like, well, he shouldn't be, you know, it kind of bring up the angle of like, is he real security? And now there's people and was that what he's there for? And I don't, you know, I remember he was pals with Zach Wilde. That's why I met Zach Wilde. He brought him to a couple of shows. Like they were personal friends somehow, or, you know, yeah, nice, great guy. So I don't even know. That's the other thing working for wrestling. Like, where is he? Is he gone? Why? I don't know. You know, did they rethink security things, or I don't know. But
he actually passed away in 2015. So R.I.P. Jim Totson. Yes,
that's awful.
Well, back to the segment though. So Bossman comes out with the cop. Big Show, very serious face here. No smiles, nothing. He is pissed. And
well, everyone's been all like, you gotta be extra angry. And that's like, I said, that poor, in effect, if anyone's out there or this guy, we'd love to like either have him on or have him call. Like, I'd love to hear his perspective. Cause he's just like a guy in my life to like, oh, see you later, buddy. And like, I don't know what happened, but man, so gulp.
Yes. So Big Show runs out. Bossman, like you said, powders away. What's the term?
Powders.
Powders,
you know,
just like a powder, like a smoke.
Yeah, something. Chris Jericho is famous for like, oh, I've caused a big scene, and now let me just roll out and sneak away as someone else is getting hammered. Very good.
Big Show just strangles this, like he's shaking him like Andre shook what's his name in WrestleMania 4, the baseball guy, Bob Uecker.
Bob Uecker, yeah.
But like,
that's right. And even like, Andre's was a little more gentle. It just was ridiculous.
This was like, he might have given this guy a concussion because he would shake him, do a choke slam, lift him up, and then there was the third choke slam that he did. The cop landed right on his neck, like it was just a high angle drop.
It was so unbelievable because you could see there was one of those spots where there was some clunkiness based in like. That's why I was wondered, like, was this guy a worker or did he just get so overwhelmed by Show? Because it wasn't quite the, all right, keep your back flat. It was kind of like he was scrambling a little and tried to get in, but it just like, didn't matter. It was a little messy, but it made it better because everyone was just like, oh, dear Lord. The way he shook him, it was like, because he was just building up the whole thing, like walking around like, okay, I'm mad. He's making fun of my dad. He fucking just poking the bear. Like, the whole show, people are poking the bear, and this, poor guy's walking around like, oh, well, all right, so what do I got to do? Just survive, man. Just, tuck your chin when you hit the mat. Like, it just no marching orders, and just like, it was just brutal. It's just vicious. I'd love to, wrestling doesn't have credits, so it'd be great if someone could find out. This guy, oh my God.
Please, if you're out there, reach out to us.
It was.
Then we have Godfather and Sexual Chocolate versus Viscera and Midian, continuing this, mix and match feud that these guys are having. And again, all these guys need something to do. So you're keeping them busy. And it's so great because Mark Henry's all smiles. It's almost like he's been cured. And he helps. Again, a Godfather, one of the biggest pops. Like, if you take away the main eventers, if you take away Austin, Foley, Rock, Godfather, biggest pop, easily.
It's so funny. I was on Busted Open talking to the Serious Wrestler Show, talking to Mark Henry. We were talking about this, how, like, in some respects, the Ho Train almost became, you'd see, like, just... sixth graders with like Ho Train signs and just like that. It was like Sesame Street in a way. The Ho Train, it's so like there was a weird, insane wholesomeness to it. Like he's just coming down with the hose, and
well, he was so colorful.
It was so colorful, and I remember pitching like, "Oh, we should get like." Because Halloween was coming up right after this, and I was pitching. It got shot down. Like, we got to get some kids in here with like some Ho costumes ready to get, or some Ho costumes and some Godfather costumes. If we could make one, those like crummy, Kmart looking boxes of the old school,
just like a thin piece of plastic kind of thing.
Yeah, like the mask with the rubber band and then the nylon. It's like, oh, if we could get some of those like for kids, and like. And it was like either we couldn't get it together or too far, or I don't know. But I was pitching that, man, like, hey, it's Halloween. Who are you? I'm the Godfather. And it's just like it was one of those angles that didn't come to fruition. But
the Ho Train, the finisher, the Ho Train, got the biggest pop of the match. The crowd was a little bit on their hands, but then once he starts revving up the train, the crowd's like, "Oh, I know what's coming!" Like kind of like the Worm, even too.
Sure.
And Mark Henry does an awesome tackle of Viscera out of the ring. Ho Train on Midian. 1, 2, 3. Great piece of business here.
Great piece of business.
Yeah, everything got ddone. Finally, we're up at
and this is just a crowd please. This is just one of those things where, you got 500 pounds. Him and Mark Henry tackling him. Oh, goodness gracious. Well over 800 pounds of people.
I want to see that showdown.
Yeah. Wow.
Then we have the main event, Austin versus Val Venus. And again, this is what I'm talking about with Steve Austin. Like, the crowd was buzzing during like nothing, there's like nothing going on, and you still hear, just with like fists, like punch, and Austin, look, this was a house show, but this wasn't anything. This was a punch, kick, throw him outside. Crowd goes wild for outside. Crowd goes wild for brawls in the audience. Throws Venus, and really, honestly, Austin is putting Val Venus to work here because Venus has to be flopping around for him, and of course, Venus gets some offense in as well. But like you said, this is a Hulk Hogan match. This is an '80s Hulk Hogan match. You need to give the crowd what they want.
And it made sense that it went outside because it could be just more, it kind of protected Val Venus, sort of, you know what I mean, and just like, just it could be, it's mayhem, it's a bar brawl, you know what I mean, and sometimes I think the philosophy might be, you look less weak to lose a bar brawl because, and I got hit with a fucking thing and whatever, and it was madness, and you know what I mean. So,
and actually, now that I think about it, we're a few weeks away from Austin having to have his surgery, so he's probably trying to be cautious and not take any bumps. Like, he doesn't want to take any suplexes or anything on his back or neck. So this is a much easier style to work where you're just really just walking around and dancing, kind of, as opposed to like,
well, take it easy a little bit with that, just walking around and dancing, Pasbani. It ain't quite like that. It's just walking around and dancing, huh?
I say with
take
all
it
due
easy.
But yeah,
Rob says it's just walking around and dancing.
No, Stone Cold, no. Austin gets the win, easy peasy, great finish, and we're still on the road to Survivor Series here with this triple threat still being advertised.
Yeah. And the triple threat, in my mind at the time, it's exciting. It's new. It's, and then it was good because everyone came out of this weird with some action and pissed off and and elevated or it's not even, God, everything's so over. It's not even about elevating. It's about just like maintain this altitude. You know what I mean?
And it's so interesting because you have these guys and you still have other guys in the peripheral that could be plugged into the picture.
Yeah.
Mick Foley, Val Venus, in a way, like you're setting him up.
Right.
You have all these other guys. Like, there's so much to do, so much, and so many over characters to play with. It's crazy to see.
And I gotta say one thing, and I can't remember. We should somehow incorporate Sunday Night Heat, because what happens sometimes, because I don't remember. There's certain people that just aren't on the show. Like, I don't remember, like APA's not in this show or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was times that, like, this is true. At the end of the production meeting, Michael Hayes was in charge of Sunday Night Heat. Now, sometimes people will be like, oh, there's all these peripheral shows. There were shows like Jacked and Metal and these other ones that were pretty much either synopsis of what happened during these shows with different like little takes, or just kind of like house show matches that were filmed, or certain like things like that. But Sunday Night Heat was its own show, and those matches would be done before the Smackdown matches. So you just change the ring apron. But these shows were written literally like 5 to 10 minutes on a yellow pad after the production meeting. Michael Hayes would be like, let's write Sunday Night Heat based on what was left. You know what I mean? And I don't want to say it sounded like scraps, because we had a couple things where like we did the thing with Funaki and the APA. There was a whole thematic. It was so fun. Some of the great shows that people would be like, oh, okay. It's almost like everything was rolling so high. And even Sunday Night Heat got good ratings where people didn't want to be like, oh, I'm on Sunday Night Heat and I'm not on SmackDown. Like there was none of that. It was kind of like SmackDown was sort of like a cool pressure release where like, do whatever you want. And so it's kind of like, I remember many times sitting with Mike Hayes, okay, what do we got? How about this? Or this? And then so you can do this. Yeah, maybe this thing. And sometimes people would feel like, oh, this is fun. I can do Sunday Night Heat. Pressure's off a little. And maybe the match could be longer or, you know, or whatever. The times could be like, hey, give us more time for that. Okay. It was a little bit like, maybe you could say lower stakes, but often made for great shows. And that was often really fun, you know, because some people looked at it like that. Sunday Night Heat, what's happening? But so I'd always be curious if we could maybe look at it and incorporate it like, oh, who wasn't on this SmackDown? Oh, because they did a cool thing on Sunday Night Heat.
I have the results actually for
excellent.
the SmackDown for the Heat that airs on October 24th.
Right.
1999. It's Kane and X-Pac defeating the Headbangers. So, I mean, look, Kane and X-Pac, they're upper Carters. Then we have Prince Albert defeating Stevie Richards, which that's what I would expect a Sunday Night Heat match to be.
Right.
But then you actually had a promo. I don't have what's said in the promo, but Chris Jericho comes out for a promo about China, and China comes out and counters him. Right. So you're advancing their storyline on Sunday Night Heat. I'm guessing maybe this was written for SmackDown. There wasn't enough time or something. Oh, well, this is recorded beforehand anyway, so it wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's hard for me to exactly remember because it would always get confusing because you got to remember, like, okay, we do Sunday Night Heat matches first on a Tuesday for the following Sunday, and then we change the ring apron and do SmackDown, which airs on Thursday. So since you wanted to be like...
Right.
But quite often... things were just modular, and sometimes it was good because not only did the performers not be like, oh, this is just shitty, because Sunday Night Heat used to get 3.8, 4, used to get fine ratings,
Yeah.
It was smaller, but it was, not this like, just like, oh, I'm in the shits in some house show. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, this will be good because at least it gets something on tape and someone can see. And also you want to advance something like, oh, Stevie Richards, his gimmicks. Let's see if it has some legs. You know what I mean? Because everyone should know, as they do, is like, well, if you do something insane, because it still was their responsibility to get themselves over. Everything wasn't so hyper controlled. So sometimes Sunday Night Heat was a good pressure release for that. You'd be like, well, here's a match of Prince Albert and Stevie Richards. Give it to the agent, and it'd be up to them to be like, oh, let's see if we can burn the house down on fucking Sunday Night Heat. That's all that's going to do is bleak later. And, because everything is all like, oh, does Vince know? Did Vince see it? But it's the agents. Agents run the matches. Blackjack Lanza's word meant a lot. So, everyone sees like what happened. So it's all important, and it all goes. So that's what made like Sunday Night Heat great. And then we would have like, however you want to call it, A-list talent, mid-card. Tended to try to not look at it like that. I kind of looked at it like there's the A-listers and then there's everybody, in terms of how you worked it. So, oh, good. Yeah. Bring these results every time. That's funny because I'll remember some stuff.
Yeah. The other two matches were Gangrel defeated Steve Blackman, and D'Lo defeated Chris Jericho to retain the European Championship. So I'm guessing what happened was Jericho told China that he was going to win a title in the middle of the promo, like that promo that they had,
right,
and then ended up losing. Likely China cost him the match, I would assume.
Yeah, and some of that stuff too. You got to remember, D'Lo was being reincorporated at. He had that horrible spot with draws where he got paralyzed. So he, it's kind of like, I know he felt just to be traumatized and to be kind of like worked back in it because he was so respected as a worker because he's the real deal. Rumor has it like Ahmed Johnson. He just kind of said like, just calm down, Ahmed Johnson, and then just stretched him like that, So, so to keep some of this stuff alive, not only for themselves and even man, sometimes you'd get better ideas of like what to do moving forward with people. They weren't just like not on the show, and it's always a pleasure to see Steve Blackman work. It's just like,
of course,
Lord. guy's like a living action figure with this balance, and then like, oh look, he knows how to use kung fu with all these weapons. Oh great, as if the one guy that doesn't need any of that fucking has it, like.
So the rating for Heat for that week was 3.5, which is an insane rating for the C show.
Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah.
What
for
everyone,
SmackDown was 4.8. Just
people are
and then
popping.
The Raw SmackDown was like 6 or 7. So
yeah, people are popping champagne for 1.2s now.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Raw rating nowadays is like 1.8, and SmackDown's is like somewhere in the lower 2s. So but it's different. It's I think it's calculated a little differently. There were more.
And that's all nefarious how it's all calculated, but nonetheless.
But still, just for the time, like I remember Heat eventually would just taper off at like, a 1 rating or whatever. So 3.5, that like, I believe Heat was beating Nitro at the time, just to put in perspective of like how hot WWE was. Yeah. That the C show was getting higher or comparable rating to the Nitro, like to the WCW A show.
Yeah. And there was a weird fun thing about Heat. Like I said, it was kind of like you could be, like I always remember fondly the one APA and Funaki and his partner kind of like, oh, let's do a thing where they bump into Bradshaw at the coffee thing, and then he's got to chase him the whole night, and then it culminates in the match, and we can just do all these like bits, and it just became so funny because we found this dynamic where Ron Simmons would tease Bradshaw about, you mean the little guy, and Bradshaw would never get mad at Ron Simmons. He would continue to get more angry at Funaki. You know what I mean? So it was like building, and then those guys were so great. Like, remember Ron Simmons like looking in a drawer. Is he in here? Like, come on, he ain't that small. And just to have like a theme. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, let's try to put a theme on, and so fun because it was like with Michael Hayes, just like, I mean. It was like production meeting ends. Everyone goes off to be like, wrestlers, like, what are we doing? What am I doing? It's just like, oh, hold on. Sunday Night Heat, yellow pad. Oh, we do this, and like, great. And sometimes the roster was so huge, like you'd said, you're like, oh, Kane and X-Pac, never shitty. Or, the Hollies were on Sunday Night Heat, never shitty. You know what I mean? You're just always saying like, ooh, I get, let's keep up with Jericho. And also it was great for the storylines to continue because you could incorporate what happened into either a video thing in, a video opening or something. It wasn't like, oh, we got to bring that back up. So you could just, as you went on, to be like, oh, this happened, as if it were just on Raw and SmackDown. So they all were the same in that sense. The whole world's storyline was moving forward. And that was a big thing that we'd always have, like, oh, the studio was so great. Like, we'd sometimes write like, just do a video package about like bringing us up to date on the whole China Jericho thing, and then they would just do like an incredible package, and you could open the show with it or whatever, or throw it at any point and be like, and then the announcers would be like, oh, and everyone's up to speed. So you use all those elements; they weren't to waste. You know what I mean? At all. And that was something you'd always tell people, like, hey, don't look at Heat like that, because this could, a good moment can pop up in video on that, which can then get you on the main stage more and more. So like everyone's attitude was, up.
Yeah, you have to maximize your minutes, right? So even if they're just giving you Heat, give them a reason to put you on the main show by showing off on Heat.
Yeah. And just enjoy Heat. It's 3.5 or whatever.
Yeah, people are going to see it.
Sure.
Well, that's going to wrap up this week. We're on the road to Survivor Series, to this big angle, of course, that happens at Survivor Series with who runs over Steve Austin. It's Steve Austin's final weeks in the company for about a year.
And some interesting stuff in my hometown of Detroit. And we'll tell you, it ain't just dancing, Pasbani. That's what Austin would call you. Pasbani thinks it's just dancing.
I would be honored. I'd be honored to be roasted by Stone Cold.
Cool.
But we hope you stay with us. Of course, send us your email. We'd love your feedback. TFTattitudeera@gmail.com. TFT is, of course,
look at the graphic, right? There's a graphic somewhere.
There's a graphic. Yes.
And find out who that guy was, that poor guy who almost got infant shake. What's the syndrome when you shake a kid? There's some kind of Almost got shook to death. Gosh. Yeah.
And until then, we'll see you next time on Tales from the Attitude Era.